Hello, and welcome to the College and Career Fair presentation on resources for students with disabilities. My name is Nicole Edelman, and I am the District 504 Specialist in the Office of Student Support Programs and Services for Pasco County Schools. The objectives of this presentation are to provide participants with the steps, required documents, and information needed to apply for accommodations in post-secondary educational institutions. Knowledge is power. It is also to encourage students with disabilities to advocate for themselves and what they need to be successful in colleges and universities and in the workforce. And lastly, I will distinguish the differences between Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, known as Section 504, the Americans with Disabilities Act, known as ADA, and the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, known as IDEA. Understanding the differences between these pieces of legislation will help students with disabilities and their parents know their rights and know how to advocate for the students' needs. Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act has that key statement of the law, but in simpler terms, it basically states that an individual with a documented disability may not be discriminated against or be denied the benefits of any program or activity of an institution receiving federal funds. The person must have a documented impairment that substantially limits the student in one or more major life activities. Major life activities include, but are not limited to, walking, seeing, hearing, speaking, breathing, reading, learning, working, and performing manual tasks. Section 504 is a program that is applicable to pre-K through 12th grade students. They are considered a basic ed student. Section 504 is about access to the educational environment. So, under Section 504 regulations, a free, appropriate public education is designed to meet individual educational needs of persons with disabilities as adequately as the needs of persons without disabilities are met. A student who is eligible for Section 504 would be protected under Section 504 and may or may not require accommodations. Protections include periodic reevaluation as needed, manifestation determination, which involves determining if a student's behavior is due to their impairment. They also receive anti-discrimination rights and their procedural safeguards. Section 504 is enforced by the Office of Civil Rights, which is a part of the U.S. Department of Education. The Americans with Disabilities Act, or the ADA, like Section 504, is responsible for accommodations in testing situations and programs and improved building accessibility. The language of ADA tracks Section 504 and explains that the remedies, procedures, and rights under ADA are the same as under the Rehabilitation Act. The ADA broadened the agencies and businesses that must comply with the non-discrimination and accessibility provisions of the law. A student who has Section 504 eligibility in pre-K through 12, or any portion of that, will have their 504 morph into ADA once they enter into the post-secondary educational setting. Some of the reasonable accommodations that may be required for eligible students are ones that are made to help the student perform essential functions of the job or task that they are being presented with. As a subsection of ADA, Title II and Title III also speak to what institutions must adhere to for persons with disabilities. Title II states that students who attend public colleges are protected against disability discrimination by Title II, which applies to state and local government entities. Title III applies to the services, activities, and programs provided by public institutions. Private and for-profit colleges must also adhere to Title III, which prohibits discrimination by, quote, private entities that offer certain examinations and courses related to the educational and occupational certification, end quote. They are required to provide academic services in an accessible environment. Both Title II and III of the ADA are enforced by the U.S. Department of Justice. The IDEA, or Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, is the most intensive federal law that speaks to students with disabilities and provides the most protection and benefits. If a child has a disability that adversely affects educational performance, that child is entitled to an education that is designed to meet the child's unique needs and from which the child receives educational benefit via an individual education plan, or an IEP. A student is eligible if the disability meets one or more of the 13 specific disability category requirements and the need for special education and related services. Some of these categories are specific learning disability, orthopedically impaired, other health impaired, intellectual disability, deaf, hard of hearing, etc. IDEA ensures that students with a disability under one of these 13 categories are provided with specialized instruction or special education services. States are required to ensure the provision of full educational opportunity, or FAPE, free and appropriate public education, to all children with disabilities. Exceptional student education is applicable to persons aged 3 through 22. As a student approaches the conclusion of their secondary education, high school, students with an IEP receiving special education services will have a meeting with their case manager and other school-based staff to discuss post-secondary plans and goals and provide advisement as to how to smoothly transition during that time. For a student with 504 eligibility, vocational rehabilitation can be just as helpful in providing support and services, and it is highly recommended that the student and their parent or guardians consider this resource. With a significant percentage of students with exceptionalities seeking opportunities in the post-secondary realm, many prospective college students with disabilities will find that many campuses are equipped with offices and services that address accessibility, accommodation, and assistive technology for a diverse range of needs. Student services offices and disability coordinators at many colleges work to make campuses inclusive environments through specialized advocacy, support, and academic services. So, colleges and university requirements. These are going to vary depending upon the institution and the student needs. So the paperwork that you will need to fill out will be different depending on where you're looking to go. If the student has been receiving ESE services through an IEP, the Student Accessibility Office may require an updated evaluation from a healthcare provider, either physiologically or psychologically. Some colleges and universities will require more information intake or may require specific information by accommodation categories. For example, some universities are asking for information about accommodations needed in housing, and some categorize it as accommodations needed for academics. It is important for students, particularly for Section 504, but students with any disabilities under ESC or 504, to investigate vocational rehab services, as they can provide additional support such as vocational evaluation and planning, job coaching, on-the-job training, assistive technology and devices, time-limited medical and or psychological treatment, medical and psychological assessments. So vocational rehab provides a lot of services that is a resource that is not utilized as much as it very much could be. So it's worth looking into. Disclosing your disability status to your college is completely optional. However, you will need to disclose that information if you wish to receive academic adjustments. This gives your college administration the information and time they need to arrange for assistive aids and services for your classes. In order to receive those adjustments, the Education Department suggests you examine disability procedures through admissions advisors, college counselors, college websites, student handbooks, and course catalogs. Of course, a student's high school counselor can also provide a wealth of information and point the student in the right direction. If you plan to apply for academic adjustments, it's important to learn about your college disability procedures in advance so that you can receive assistive services and tools in time for the courses. Do not wait until the last minute to make requests. It may be helpful to know that state-run organizations are eligible to receive grant funding for assistive technology programs in a number of environments, including college campuses. These grants help fund the purchase of assistive technologies, or AT, such as voice amplifiers, special software, computing hardware, and wheelchairs. Some of the sample steps that a student and their parent or guardian can take are to search the educational institution's Student Accessibility Services Office or the Offices of Accessibility Services. You can do a research for this online doing a simple Google search. You literally can type in, for example, USF Office of Student Accessibility Services, and it will take you to that site. Or if you go on to the school's main site and you do a search through their particular search engine for something such as students with disabilities or the word accessibility, those are great ways to search and point you in the right direction. It's important to set up an appointment to speak to somebody and or touring the campus. Filling out an intake form, those intake forms may vary by the educational institution, but at some point they will need to gather your information. You will want to provide them with any documentation regarding the disability or disabilities, including medical, educational, and so forth. The Office of Student Accessibility Services will determine what accommodations, aids, services the student with disabilities will be provided with, and the student will be informed of that in a confidential way, remembering that a student who is 18 years old or older will have the communication done directly to them and not through their parent. Some common examples of accommodations that the college may provide are things such as sound amplification aids, speech-to-text software, accessible testing locations, note-taking services, even being able to register for a class with priority, sign language interpretation, course substitutions, housing accommodations, and audiobooks. Here you see my contact information. Again, my name is Nicole Edelman, and I welcome any and all questions, and thank you for your time.